Thanks, thanks, Colette, and happy Friday and happy mid-August to everyone. I hope you've all had a really great summer. It's our first website chat in a couple of months, as we've had a little bit of a summer break with everybody's busy schedules. Really appreciate you joining us for our website chat today. I think most of you know me, but in case you don't, I'm Jennie Stapp, and I'm the state librarian. Just a little reminder as we come together for this website chat and we use our Zoom. This is a really informal time for us to come together. We hope you'll share information about who you are. Please feel free to share questions in the chat or unmute yourself and ask a question or share a comment. We don't want to be restrictive in that. Really happy to have your conversation with us. Some of the things I wanted to talk about today, we have some new staff to introduce you to that I'm really excited about. Rebecca Camp is with us to talk about what's new with the Public Library Survey. Wanted to kind of lift the hood and give you a little bit more information about our work with the Institute of Museum and Library Services, or IMLS, and some of those requirements and reporting that we do with them. Our commission met on Wednesday the 14th, and so I have a short update for you about that meeting. And then, of course, information about upcoming training opportunities and how you can be in communication with us here at the State Library. So let's start with some introductions. We hired two great new employees who both started with us on July 8th. We stole Corey from the Bozeman Public Library, where some of you might have known her in her work with the adult programming and outreach department. Corey has been hired to be one of our statewide consulting librarians. Her specific consulting target area is the Broad Valleys and Pathfinder Federations of Montana. And then she's available to contribute her expertise and leadership in helping our team, as well as library directors and boards around the state. So Corey, welcome. And if you want to say hello to the group, you're welcome to do so.
Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be working for the State Library. It's been just over a month and it's been really fun and a ton of learning so far. I'm trying to meet as many people as I can before it gets cold and the weather turns. So for those of you I've met in person, hello. For those of you I haven't, it's just a matter of time.
Thanks, Corey. And then our second new hire is Savannah Sill. She's been hired as our Montana Library Network Coordinator. She took that role when Kara moved into one of the statewide consulting librarians. We hired her after her work with the Army National Guard in the child and youth and family programming role. And one of the things about Savannah to know is that her mother was a librarian in Hobson for a while. So we're just super excited to have Savannah as well. Savannah, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, I do. Hi, everybody. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm very excited to start getting my feet wet. And as Corey said, there's definitely lots of learning. And I'm looking forward to, jumping in more, getting to meet more of you. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. So thank you.
Thanks, Savannah. All right, I'm going to turn things over to Rebecca.
Good afternoon, I'm Rebecca Camp, and I am the State Library Data Coordinator. It's almost that time of year again where we'll be opening the Public Library Survey, and this year's survey will open October 1st. It'll run through November 29th. And I wanted to call a few different changes to the survey to your attention. And I think I'm actually going to go a little bit out of order of the bullet points I provided today, because I want to start with showing you some of the resources that we've been creating. We do have a new Montana Library Network technician here at the State Library, Gil, and Gil has been helping with writing some knowledge-based articles that I hope will be helpful to you as you navigate both the public library survey, but any other report that we're offering through our new reporting system, Counting Opinions LibPass. So I'm just going to pull up my screen here. Maybe. Play, may I pull up my screen, please?
Go right ahead.
All right, I'm getting a host disabled screen sharing message.
Should be clear now.
And then I think you might have to, it says, cannot start screen sharing while other participant is sharing. Maybe, there we go. All right, we're in business. So the screen that you're seeing right now is our Counting Opinions LibPass software, and your credentials will work the same across all of the surveys that we use in this system. So as you know, we just closed out our Federation grants reports as well as the public library standards. So if you have those credentials, those will get you back into Counting Opinions. Otherwise, as we get close to the date of launching the survey, I will resend out all of your credentials to you in case you did not save those. From this page, you'll see that the look is a little bit different. We did add some features here so that you can see which of the reports are currently open. Right now, everything is closed, but you can see the date ranges for those reports. So that should be helpful for you, as sometimes we have reports running simultaneously, such as the Federation grant report and the public library standards. But on the far left, the public library survey, which you may also know as your annual statistical report. There are a few different resources I wanted to call to your attention. We have the worksheet as well as the definition. So if you want to have a head start on your survey, you're welcome to print out the worksheet. You can refer to the definitions. I don't recommend printing out that whole document. It is quite large, but it is a good resource if you want to get into the nitty-gritty about what each of the survey items means. We also have a program tracking spreadsheet, and I'll tell you a bit more about programs in a moment because we did do some refinements in the labeling of programs to make it more clear about what we're asking and what we're trying to collect. And then we have 2 recorded tutorials that you can refer to as well that are out on our YouTube channel. If you go to the Montana State Library website and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can click on this dashboard tile. And this will bring you to all of our different data dashboards at the Montana State Library. But the one I want you to pay attention to today is the one labeled Public Libraries. And if you click on that, you can go to About the Survey, which will have the different resources I just mentioned. In addition, a link to our knowledge base. And Bill has been hard at work adding articles. I know he's in the middle of creating a couple different articles about the reporting functionality within Counting Opinions as well. And if we go back here, you can see that we also have the links to the element definitions and the data worksheet. I mentioned there's a few different changes this year in the survey. And if you want a sneak peek at those, you can actually access the survey without it being open to fill out. And the way to get there is to click on Respond to the Public Library Survey. It's going to default to last year, but if you want that sneak peek, you can flip it over to 2024. And it'll be locked for you, so you can't submit it yet, but you can look at the questions and how they'll be laid out for collection. And some of the sections that have changes this year come from the national survey. And one of those areas is in collections and in the electronic collection. As you know, Our ebooks are a different model than our physical books, and they're somewhat ephemeral. So the count of our ebooks changes frequently throughout the year, so it's hard to get an accurate count on those. So instead of providing a collection count of your ebooks, we're instead asking for how you're purchasing those ebooks. And so you'll see questions here. Some of them will be preloaded for you. If you are already participating in Montana Library to Go, we know that at the states we'll answer yes for the appropriate questions on those. Otherwise, we want to know if you're purchasing ebooks, e-serials, e-audio, e-videos, any research databases, or online learning platforms at the local level. And these are just yes or no drop-down questions. The other area that you'll see changes is in the program section, and these are state level changes. The questions remain the same from the national survey, but we found that the way that they were labeled was clunky and confusing. And so what we did is we went through and workshopped those labels and came up with clearer labeling for you. So instead of looking for synchronous programs aimed at, different age groups, it's just labels like infant, toddler, preschool. If you want the full definition, you can always click and you can review the full definition, or you can refer to that worksheet I mentioned with the definitions. New this year, we had a request from multiple different libraries to be able to report self-directed activities. I know many of you do activities like summer reading logs. In the past, we didn't really have a section where you could report that type of activity. Now you can, and that's in your self-directed activities. And if you don't have any of those activities, you can answer no. But if you answer yes, you'll be presented with an option to tell us how many people participated, or if you didn't capture that, you can let us know that as well. Finally, we have a rotating research section that we've added to the survey. As you know, last year we asked questions about salaries among your staff. And this year, we're instead asking questions about how your library might be addressing issues regarding barriers to accessing the library, especially in terms of geographic distance. So we want to know how you're reaching out to your outlying rural communities or just areas that are further away from the library. And so I worked with librarians around the state to get an idea of what type of questions we might want to ask. For example, if your library has an outreach vehicle that's smaller than a bookmobile, such as a book bike or maybe an outreach van, there hasn't been questions historically about that. So we would like to know more about those type of services your library is offering. And it's possible there's something you're offering to cross those geographic divides that we didn't even think of. And so there's a catch-all question at the bottom where you can tell us some of the other ways that you're addressing divide in your community. Those are the new sections of the survey. Again, this will open October 1st, and I'll be reaching out to all of you with your credentials again as the survey open date approaches. And I just wanted to check in with you to see if you have any questions.
Thanks, Rebecca. Any questions for Rebecca? I'm particularly excited about the idea of doing a geographic study, understanding how distance and geography impact Montanans' ability to access, especially in-person or physical library services, so that we have a better sense of the kinds of services and programming we can offer to help overcome those kinds of barriers. We've been thinking about how to describe the importance of doing this kind of work. And one example that we can offer is the Fort Peck Tribal Reservation is roughly the size of the state of Connecticut. And there are a couple of libraries on the reservation and a couple of libraries directly next to the reservation. So approximately 4 libraries serving that geographic area. And the state of Connecticut, Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's something like 281 libraries in the state of Connecticut. So obviously populations are different, but geography and distance is a very, very important measure when we think about people's ability to access library services.
Jenny, it looks like Nancy has a question in Cascade County.
Sure. Rebecca, I'm assuming that there's several, because I've downloaded that worksheet and whatnot, and there's several areas that are pre-filled. So I'm assuming if they're inaccurate, we need to email you.
That would be the best way to let me know. For example, I know sometimes libraries may have interlibrary loans that wouldn't be captured through either the shared catalog or OCLC. For example, if you're shipping out book kits, that might be moderated through a different system. So if you see something like that, the best way to get a hold of me, rather than sending an email, I'd encourage you to open a support desk ticket, which is another item I meant to mention. In addition to that knowledge base, we have a support desk, and the support team you want is library research and evaluation. That way, if I'm not in the office, another staff person that's qualified to answer that question can get back to you a little bit faster.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Other questions for Rebecca? All right, let's go ahead and move on. Like I said, I wanted to just pop the hood in a little bit and talk about IMLS and our relationship with them and the funding that they provide. We recently came off of our site visit from IMLS, so it's been on the minds of those of us here at the State Library. For those of you who don't know, IMLS, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, is our federal funder. They're a federal agency through which our Library Services and Technology Act funds come. You might also know them as a major grantor for library granting opportunities like the Laura Bush grants and library leadership grants and so on. We receive approximately $1.4 million a year from them to support library development. And that work helps to support all of our great staff resources that support libraries. We use that funding to help support the Montana Shared Catalog and OCLC and the Courier and other kinds of services that we're providing in support of improving libraries around the state of Montana. We have requirements that we have to meet in order to be eligible for that funding. For example, we are required to submit a 5-year plan to IMLS that they approve and that aligns with the priorities for libraries that come from IMLS. We also have to have an independent evaluation every 5 years of how we are spending our LSTA dollars and the impact that they're having. And so every 5 years or so, we issue an RFP and hire a qualified consultant or researcher who can come in and conduct that independent evaluation on our behalf. And then we use that evaluation to help inform the next 5-year plan. We also approximately every 5 years have a visit from our IMLS program officer, where it's a chance for that person to come to the State Library, learn a little bit more about our operations and services. They look at the policies and requirements that we are required to meet. They look at our financial management of the dollars that we receive. And then they learn a lot about how we are spending those monies. And then finally, we're required to provide local match funds as well as maintenance of effort. And if you're not familiar with maintenance of effort, it's a requirement that the state of Montana provide dollars in order to continue to support library development as well. A lot of states will use their LSTA funds to re-grant to local libraries for grant projects and programs. The Montana State Library moved away from that model going on 30 years ago now, and instead we've used those dollars to support statewide library development that really benefits all libraries in the state. So we don't have that matching component of local grants and local grant dollars going to support those re-granted funds. But we still have a local match requirement, and some of the ways we meet that match requirement is in the dollars that your libraries contribute to help support your costs for things like the shared catalog and Montana Library to Go and OCLC, as well as your time and commitment in helping to make those programs successful. And we do an annual report as well as a larger report on how we spend those dollars. And so you're always able to find that kind of information on our website. Just some information about the goals of our current LSTA 5-year plan. The first goal is that all Montanans have access to library content, services, and information to achieve their personal, educational, and professional goals. The second goal is around access to and use of technology to meet their personal growth. That libraries live in communities where, or that Montanans live in communities where the local government and the library work together to build resilient communities. And that all Montanans have access to learning experiences that support their personal, professional, and educational growth. So you will see from us in the coming weeks our work plan for the current fiscal year, where we are describing how we intend to work towards achieving these goals over the coming year. And for your September website chat, we'll spend some time talking with you about what those work plan goals are for the coming year, so you have a little better sense of how our work aligns to these goals, how we define success for these goals, and what that means for our work with all of you in your libraries. So here is our friend Dennis. Dennis Nangle is our program officer from IMLS, and there's Savannah as well as Gil. We are on our way to Great Falls at this point for Dennis's site visit that he had here in late July, the first part of August. Some interesting things about Dennis: he's been our program officer since 2019 when he began working for IMLS. So this is the second time that he's been able to come out to Montana and visit with us. When he was here, it was actually about 6 years ago. The state of Montana was on fire, and he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to complete the route that Kara had planned for him. He was reminding us how smoky it was when he was here visiting. It's great to be able to have the relationship with Dennis where we're really getting to know him. He's getting to know us. He's becoming familiar with Montana and Montana libraries. It's such a great partnership. In my mind, it really mirrors the relationship that we at the State Library want to have with all of you. And I feel really fortunate that, unlike some of the other state agencies that we work with where they have federal counterpoints, the relationship is not one where they're coming in to audit us. It's very much a partnership where we're working together to help advance library services around the country and in the state of Montana. Some unique things about Dennis. Dennis was the documents librarian for Cirque du Soleil, if you can believe. I have never known anyone who worked for Cirque du Soleil. I thought that sounded just absolutely fascinating. Specifically, he was the technical documents librarian for the regional shows of Cirque du Soleil. So those that exist in Las Vegas and Los Angeles, and I think there was one in Japan and one in China. Really, really sounded like amazing work. And Dennis also has experience working at a state library. He worked in the Maryland State Library, where he lives with his and his family. And like I said, he started working for IMLS in 2019. I know librarians in the state are starting to get to know Dennis, and he's just a great partner to have. No idea what just happened to my computer screen. Oh, there we go. Let's try to go back. Sorry, everyone. My screen froze for just a minute. So when Dennis was here, he started out in Helena, and like I said, he met with a number of our staff here and online, getting to know sort of the nitty gritty of how we're spending our dollars. And then we spent a couple of days together on a pretty epic road trip where he had a chance to visit libraries, meet librarians, and see and talk about the impact of some of the work that we do that's funded by the LSTA dollars. One day we drove to Great Falls and to Stonechild College Library, where he was able to meet with Susie in Great Falls and Joy in Box Elder. Specifically, when we were in Great Falls, he had an opportunity to visit with Susie about Montana Library to Go and some of the challenges that we face in providing enough content to meet the demand that we see for ebooks and e-audio through Montana Library to Go. In visiting with Joy, he was able to see a tribal college library, learn about the work and the needs of that community, and we were able to visit about the opportunities that now exist with some of the state funding that will be available for tribal college libraries that serve their communities in that public library role. And then we drove all the way back to Helena later that day. So Wednesday was a very long day with him. And then we got up early on Thursday morning and drove him to Billings, where he ultimately flew out the next day. On our way there, we stopped at the Marr County City Library, the Harleton Public Library, the Big Timber Library, and the Billings Public Library. While we were in White Sulphur Springs at the Marr County City Library, he was able to learn more about that library's relatively recent adoption of the partner sharing group and the courier, and how those two services have so dramatically changed both the demands for library services from their community and then the number of resources that are available to their patrons. In Harleton, we talked about the Montana Shared Catalog. The Harleton Public Library is the newest member of the Montana Shared Catalog. And so Tina described for Dennis the process and what the impact of being a member of the Shared Catalog means for their community and some of her hopes for the future now that she's a part of that collaborative consortia. In Big Timber at the Carnegie Public Library, Jackie was able to describe for Dennis the process of going through the internal wiring program that we've been offering here at the State Library, upgrading the wiring in her library to help her patrons have better, more reliable access to the internet, and how much easier it is for her to be informed and manage her internet network inside her building because of the work that we've been able to help her accomplish in upgrading her network. And then finally in Billings, Gavin offered Dennis a tour of the Billings Public Library. We talked a little bit about how the Billings Public Library is a contributor to the Montana History Portal with a lot of their great digital content about the city of Billings and the surrounding areas. And then he also got to meet with a librarian who's a school librarian from the Billings Public Schools, also a recent member of the Montana Shared Catalog. So Dennis really got a sense of the geography that we serve, the differences in the libraries and the communities that our libraries are serving, the sizes and the demographics of the libraries. It was a really great opportunity for him to really understand the impact that the LSTA funds have for Montana libraries, as well as the opportunities and challenges that we continue to face. So I hope that was interesting and informative as you learn a little bit more about the nature of our relationship with IMLS and the funds that we receive to help support all of you. Just want to pause there and ask if there's any questions. Gil is great, and he had a very fun time with Dennis. That was a really fun road trip. All right, let's go ahead and move on and talk just a little bit about the commission's August business meeting. As I said, they just met this past Wednesday on the 14th. I shared with you what their sort of regular business calendar looks like so you can get a sense of what their meeting cadence looked like. And as you can see, our August meetings are typically relatively light meetings for the commission. There's not a lot of business items that typically come to the commission. That's especially true now that we are in the second year of the biennium on the state's biennial planning and budgeting cycle. And then at their October meeting, one of the regular business items that always come to the commission in October is the reports from the Federation coordinators on how the Federation spent their previous fiscal year's financial awards. And so that will be coming up at their meeting on October 9th. I wanted to let all of you know that at the August meeting, commissioners raised questions about young adult collections in our libraries. It's something that they're interested in learning a little bit more about. And so we've been thinking about how we might respond to some of the questions that they raised. One point that Commissioner Hall raised was looking at a book review site called booklooks.org that some of you might be familiar with. Booklooks.org has a rating system that they use to evaluate titles from a 0 to 5, meaning 0 is a title that's appropriate for everyone and anyone, and 5 is something that absolutely is an adult-based kind of book. It's just one example, of course, of those kinds of book review platforms that are available. Some steps that we are taking based on that conversation with the commission. We're using booklooks.org to better understand what titles that site has evaluated exist in Montana libraries and how librarians have them cataloged in their collections, whether they fall within the adult collection, if some of them fall within a young adult collection or juvenile and so forth. I did want to mention, if you're not familiar with booklooks.org, it's a site that is not affiliated with any particular organization, and they review and evaluate books that are recommended to them to include in their review process. So again, we're using that platform and as the basis for evaluating information on how we find those books in Montana collections. And then we also want to use the federations as an opportunity to ask questions of libraries about what kinds of guidance, if any, you might want from the state library about how you build and maintain and provide access to your young adult collections. There was a suggestion that perhaps the state library might offer some guidance or best practices about maintaining young adult collections. So again, we're going to be having conversations at the Federation meetings about what questions librarians might have that might lend themselves to providing those kinds of best practices. One of the things I'm interested in knowing about, and if you have feedback for us today, that would be great, is whether or not you and your libraries are getting questions from your communities about your young adult collections and perhaps the age range that you use to help define your young adult collection, or how you decide what kinds of content might go into it. And then also we're interested in knowing what kinds of book review or book recommendation sources you use to help in your collection development. Are you using book lists, novelists, Common Sense Media, or other kinds of sources that help inform and guide your collection development? So if anybody has feedback for us today, I'd sure appreciate hearing that. And again, we'll be having those conversations more at Federation meetings in the next couple of months as well. Has anybody had any questions from your communities about your young adult collections in particular? And if not, that's good information too. That's interesting, Jonna. Would you say that's just because of the demographics in your community? Janet, you're right, knock on wood. And part of why we want to have these conversations is so that we can be prepared if and when questions come. I see your comment, Emily. Jonna says that they don't get many teens, and the people who use the young adult are often in their early 20s. We were having a conversation about the distinction between sort of young adult and new adult earlier today. And I think that is a distinction that we perhaps need to be sure and make. Your comments about the lack of use of the young adult collections makes me think that maybe we should pull some use statistics as well. Young adult manga collection is the most that's checked out of our collection. That's interesting, Janet. More adults reading the young adults than the YA books than the young adults. Emily says they have Harry Potter in the YA, which people can't believe. That's part of this question, right? Like there really is no standard for determining what is in YA. Michelle says they've not had any questions about how we catalog YA or juvenile. Get questions from patrons about the government banning, concerned about the news in Idaho. Well, I appreciate this feedback very much. This is probably the start of a conversation, not the end of a conversation. So thank you. And if you have more feedback for us in the coming months, please do let us know. And we'll look forward to visiting with you at Federation meetings over the next couple of months as well. All right. I'm gonna pause there and again ask if there's any questions, comments, discussion. Again, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a mic. We have some great upcoming webinars, so be sure and check out the Aspen calendar for those opportunities. We will certainly look forward to seeing you at the Federation meeting starting next month. continue to have craziness with my computer. There we go. Whew. Be sure and claim your credits. And as always, we love to hear your feedback about these events. So please complete our evaluation. And thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Jenny, and thanks to everybody who joined. We'll have our recording posted as well as the slides and resource links that we shared today. So thanks so much. And we hope that everyone has an incredible day and a wonderful weekend as we kind of make our way towards the end of summer.
That's right. Thank you, everyone.